boy, this is the bottom here with this thing at Harvard is two very opposite things. This feels like it's a very woke person to think that of Harvard, and then this is the opposite perspective altogether. That's very interesting. Wow. Okay, so alrighty. Did we just have news today drop or what? Courtesy of the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. Wait a second. Yeah, Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. I think I got that right. Hold on a second. I did get that right. Well, lordy. I've been having a day. But this is their thing. This is now the fourth time. And while it says 2024, they mean academic year, because usually the 2024 academic year follows the same kind of thing as the fiscal year, because the government is going into fiscal year 2024. We are in academic year 2024. It's a very similar kind of thing that just started recently. And so the college free speech rankings are available for universities. And of course, why do we talk about these things? Because, well, this is where we train the next generation of scientists. And so this kind of matters what's going on at universities. And you can see the headline is somewhat alarming. So I have the report. I have the link for the rankings. I will leave, of course, all of it in the description for you. But before I forget and do a little advertising, so if you are not a member over here on Wokescreen, you should be, because for those of us working to, change culture, and make things a little better, also promote some civility and discussion between folks with disagreements, because that does happen in our community discussions. We do have some interesting disagreements that arise, but we discuss them civilly, if you will. Wokescreen is the place, and you're missing a lot if you are not a member. You're missing the editorial with news content in written form, if you like. You're missing the crowdsourced podcast with news content there, and I have made a guest appearance on that show, as Kieran, friend of the channel and founder of Wokescreen, has made appearances there. Culture Jam is another one. As a member, you also get all sorts of access to, what is this? Games night in the community calls, as well as the community calls, along with so many other things that are coming this way. It is got a lot of approaches to it, and it is awesome. If you are not a member, you should be a member. And right now, if you use my promo code here, let me make sure I've got the right one. My Wokescreen promo code ScioSophia when you sign up for any level of membership here under the support tag of the Culture Warrior, for example. So yeah, if you sign up as a member, you get 10% off and access to a myriad of different things alongside of the community calls where we get to discussing. There's artistic discussions in there. There's all sorts of discussions on news and topics of the day, and sometimes some quirky things. Community call is fantastic. And if you use my promo code here at checkout, you get, under the support tab here, you get 10% off of your membership. So if you head on over there and become a member, you will love it, because I can guarantee game night is a blast. We have so many different fun conversations and thinking about how to make things better with the culture. You also, of course, there's the Wokescreen store, which came up recently, which supports creators. Actually, I'm going to be putting stuff in the Wokescreen store soon myself, so that's another way to support everybody involved, is the Wokescreen store. So, but that is your promotion of the day. I highly suggest you sign up. You'll get 10% off your membership if you sign up with my promo code ScioSophia, scrolling at the bottom of the screen. Now, back to the content. We have the 2024 free speech rankings here present. And so released by Fire once a year. This is the fourth time they've done this. 2024 college free speech rankings show alarming 81% success rates of deplatforming attempts at the nation's most censorial schools. The largest ever survey conducted of campus free speech rankings, 248 colleges. So I think the last time they did this was, I think, about 150, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go back in my notes on that one. But it it is pretty dang impressive that there's getting to be a lot more here. And that's a good thing. I want to see more and more schools ranked with this. Michigan Tech takes over first place. Last year it was the University of Chicago. So Michigan Tech takes over first place as the most friendly college for college or university for free expression in the country. University of Virginia is also in the top 10. Harvard, dead last. Harvard had an abysmal score. Let me tell you, I did read some of it before. Oberlin College, only a little more than half of students think it is never acceptable to. I think only a little over half of students. That is still a majority, but that is pretty dang bad. Deplatforming attempts at the 5 lowest ranked colleges have an alarming 81% success rate, which means there is not very much defense of folks who speak their minds. Students entering college this fall can expect new friendships, all-night study sessions, dining hall food, and a culture of conformity and censorship. A new survey of more than 5,500 students across the country shows that most attend colleges that don't value free expression. Most of the 55,000 students, actually. There's a lot more than the 248 schools that were on the list, just for the record. Today, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression and College Pulse released the 4th annual College Free Speech Rankings, ranking the free speech cultures of 248 of America's largest and most prestigious campuses in order from best, Michigan Technological University, and to worst, Harvard University. Quote, each year, the climate on college campuses has grown more inhospitable to free speech, said Fire Director of Polling and Analytics Sean Stevens. Some of the most prestigious universities in our country have the most repressive administrations. Students should know that a college degree at certain schools may come at the expense of their free speech rights. 10 worst colleges, 10 best colleges up here. So 10 best, let's go there first. Michigan Technical University, Auburn University, University of New Hampshire, Oregon State University, Florida State University, University of Virginia, Texas A&M University, George Mason University, University of North Carolina, Greensboro, University of Colorado, Boulder. Those are the 10 best on the rankings this year. University of Texas, Austin, Dartmouth College, Donetsk University, Northwestern University, Skidmore College, Fordham University, Georgetown University, University of South Carolina, University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard University rank out the very bottom tier. The rankings rely heavily on student responses and on how schools responded to deplatforming attempts, which seek to prevent speakers from expressing themselves. Each school's speech code rating also factored into the scoring. Before I forget, let me turn that off. Turn that back on. Into the scoring. Most schools without any policies that imperil free speech rose in the rankings, while those with restrictive speech codes fell. Self-censorship is now pervasive across the board. More than a quarter of students said they censor themselves at least a few times a week in conversations with friends, and 25% said they are more likely to self-censor now at the time of responding to the survey than they were when starting college. Key findings from the report. Harvard is by far the worst school in the country for free speech. It is the only school with an abysmal rating. Deplatforming attempts that occurred at schools ranked in the bottom 5 had an alarming 81% success rate. Which means 81%. I know I've read this report before, and I know what 81% success means here. It means some kind of punishment. They're not making any distinction about the degree and severity of said punishment, but some kind of punishment for speaking your mind freely, essentially, on the college campus. Particular cases if it might have been even remotely controversial. Up to 72% of students opposed allowing a conservative speaker on campus depending on the topic, while 43% of students opposed allowing a liberal speaker on campus. Does not speak well for viewpoint diversity and universities fostering that, if that is the commentary, if that is how people are feeling. 73% of students said that using violence to stop a campus speech is never acceptable, down from 80% last year. At Oberlin College, only 53% of students said that violence is never acceptable. That's not fun. Although I'm trying to remember whether or not Oberlin College was in the news for some very unsavory things. At a time of national dialogue about abortion policy, 49% of students have difficulty discussing abortion on campus. The most difficult topics to discuss on campus are abortion, gun control, racial inequality, and transgender rights. Of the 248 schools ranked, 73 have below average, poor, very poor, or abysmal speech climates. Just 47 has slightly above average speech climates. Last year, when 203 was last year, thank you, schools were ranked 64 and 39 respectively. Okay, so there's a percentage thing there that we got to do in our heads because this is roughly a fifth. I'd say it's actually about the same because, at least in terms of the slightly above average, because I mean, 47 out of 248 is roughly one fifth, and 39 out of 203 is about the same. So, we are very pleased to see that a number of university presidents are taking the issue of freedom of speech and academic freedom very seriously by signing on to free speech initiatives, said FIRE President and CEO Greg Lukianoff. However, they have a long way to go toward restoring public trust. After all, in an environment in which you can actually get in trouble for the wrong academic opinion is not one that can be depended upon to produce reliable knowledge. It's especially disturbing that some of the worst performing institutions are among America's most influential schools, including Harvard, Georgetown, Northwestern, and Dartmouth. FIRE stands ready to help colleges protect, defend, and promote academic freedom, freedom of speech, and free inquiry. Okay, so that's the press release. Here is the said report itself, for your perusal. Yes, for your perusal. Here. A little bit from the executive summary. I mean, the executive summary you're going to find is a lot of stuff that was in the press release, but from the executive summary, here's a few things to consider. Harvard University obtained the lowest score possible, a dead zero. Now, just for the record, they ranked this basically on a similar kind of grading scale, 0 to 100, in terms of your score. So to score that badly is pretty bad. Dead zero. Dead on zero for Harvard University. Anyway. Key factors differentiating high-performing schools, the top 5, from poorly performing ones, are scores on the components of tolerance difference and disruptive conduct. Students from schools in the bottom 5 were more biased toward allowing controversial liberal speakers on campus over conservative ones, and were more accepting of students using disruptive and violent forms of protest to stop a campus speech. Frankly, if it's violent, it's not protest at that point, and FIRE should know that, given all the legal things that they do with the First Amendment. Engaging in acts of violence is not protest. Deep platforming attempts that occurred at schools ranked in the bottom 5 had an alarming 81% success rate. More than half of students expressed worry about damaging their reputation because of someone misunderstanding what they have said or done. And just over a quarter of students reported that they feel pressure to avoid discussing controversial topics in their classes. 20% report that they often self-censor. That is the often thing. We'll get into that in a second. But, you know, this to me is what happens when you start making everything about microaggressions be more important. In here, and instead of actually, discussing where you have a disagreement, you just automatically report your report based on microaggressions, which basically, if you're looking at the research around microaggressions, it's 50-50 and whether or not somebody's actually going to be offended. But I covered that earlier on this channel, so I'm not going to go diving into it too much right now, but when provided with a definition of self-censorship, at least a quarter of students said that they self-censor fairly often or very often during conversations with other students, with professors, and during classroom discussions, respectively, 25, 27, and 28%. A quarter of students also said they are more likely to self-censor on campus now, at the time the survey was collected, than they were when they first started college. That is not a good thing, in the slightest. That is not a good thing if you're encouraging students to be, if you're inadvertently on your campus basically encouraging students not to speak up their minds about something. Almost half the students surveyed, 49%, so yeah, we know about that. Student opposition to a controversial speaker on campus, to controversial conservative speakers on campus ranged from 57% to 72% depending on the speaker. I don't think they did this by an actual speaker per se. I gotta look at the report, where it is in the report, but they didn't do this by an actual speaker per se, but what a speaker was saying. I don't think, but we'll get to that. In contrast, student opposition to controversial liberal speakers ranged from 29 to 43% depending upon the speaker. That isn't a good thing. You're biased in one direction with that. They're absolutely biased in one direction with that one for most universities. Even the best ones, let's put it that way, even the best ones. More than 2 in 5 students said that blocking other students from attending a speech is acceptable to some degree. 45%, up from 37% last year. Princeton principals. Princeton principals. Go back and support the Princeton principals. I did a video on it. Students do not have the right to engage in a heckler's veto on campus. If somebody of other students want to hear a speaker speak, you don't have a right to shut down the speaker, and you don't have a right to stop the students from hearing that person speak. More than a quarter of students, 27%, said that using violence to stop a campus speech is acceptable to some degree, up from 20% last year. That is also not good. That is also not good at all. For it to go up. Now, understandably so, that is still not a majority. In fact matter, that's not even a plurality. But that is still quite a lot. At 27% of students. That isn't necessarily a good thing at all. 1 in 4, effectively. More than 1 in 5 students, 21%, reported that their college admission stance on free speech on campus is not clear. And more than a quarter of students reported that it is unlikely that their college administration would defend a speaker's right to express his or her views if a controversy occurred on campus. So, some interesting things in here for sure from the executive summary. So, again, I will give you the link to the full report, but I do want to go to some of the things I found interesting. Tolerance of controversial speakers is one here. Students ranked at the top 5, and students in the bottom 5 expressed more tolerance of controversial liberal speakers than controversial conservative ones. Groups also did not significantly differ on mean tolerance, meaning students at the top 5 schools and the bottom 5 schools reported similar average tolerance for all 6 controversial speakers. Yeah, that's what I thought. This is generally done by topic, not by specific speaker. They don't ask, like Milo Yiannopoulos, would you allow him on campus or something like that. They're asking, commentary with respect to basically things that might be tied to a conservative or tied to a more liberal speaker. And the top 3 here are in one, and the bottom 3 are in the other, kind of thing with that. So, yeah, that's what you can see with this. And it's pretty obvious, you can tell which ones, right? And that's not good, frankly. It's not good at all. With that, let's see. Disruptive conduct. The percentage of students at schools ranked in the top 5 who said it is never acceptable for students to shout down speakers, block entry to campus speech, or use violence to stop a campus speech is at least 8 points greater than those students in the bottom 5. So, best to worst comparison kind of thing is what they're doing here. So, yeah. Which disruptive conduct to stop a campus speech is never acceptable? Shouting down at this is what actually disturbs me more than anything. There's a majority of students in both cases, whether it be the best schools or the worst schools, that say it's okay to shout down and heckle a speaker. That is a heckler's veto, and no, it is not okay. Princeton principals for this one. Princeton principals. I did a video on it. This is better, at least in the top 5 schools. This is, of course, not at all. And having a good solid 32% here that are okay with using violence to stop a speech. That is not good in the slightest at the bottom 5 schools. Tells me you have way too much ideology and partisanship at a university for that to be there like that. Need to get some viewpoint diversity back. Harvard in particular. Because a lot of this may be driven by Harvard, because if I remember correctly, Harvard's score was really low compared to the other schools in the bottom 5. And I'll show that in a second, I think. So there's that as an interesting thing to look at. Let's see. That's the deplatforming attempts note. Okay. So let's see. Schools in the top 5 were not devoid of controversy. A total of 9 deplatforming attempts occurred across the 5 campuses. However, in 7 of these attempts, the school supported the student, scholar, or speaker facing a deplatforming campaign. For instance, at Michigan Tech, a petition was launched opposing Brandon Tatum's invitation to campus by Turning Point USA. In response, the student government denied funding to the event for the event in order to protect our students. Safetyism language. The school administration overruled the decision, specifically citing its obligation to the First Amendment. Bravo, Michigan Tech. You may hate what he has to say, but you got an obligation to uphold the First Amendment as a public university. The 2 sanctions at schools in the top 5 involved scholars at Auburn University and Florida State University. At Auburn, Jesse Goldberg's faculty position was converted to research only in response to backlash over his social media comments. Florida State, class was removed. Let's see. Schools in the bottom 5, on the other hand, averaged almost 7 deplatforming attempts per school, and only 1 school experienced fewer than 4, Fordham University, 3 attempts. Across all 5 campuses, 32 deplatforming attempts occurred, 26 of which resulted in some form of sanction. That's what I meant. They didn't actually, shall we say, delineate what the sanction was. Was a student expelled? Did a professor lose their job? Versus, you get dock some pay, or you had some disciplinary marks or something like that. So there's just a difference of note here, but it's still bad either way. Including 3 schools with a success rate of 100%. Just 6 of these deplatforming attempts resulted in school defending the rights of the student, scholar, or speaker under fire. So yeah, there we go. Success rates of deplatforming. That, note to self, I am not going to Harvard. Wow, some of this is really bad. Let's see. Students' political views. Down here, just to get a little there. 19%, okay. Regarding politics, the students surveyed identified predominantly as liberal, with 48% identifying this way compared to 19% identifying as conservative and 14% identifying as moderate. 234 of the schools had a predominantly liberal student body, while only 20% of the schools were predominantly conservative. The latter group includes 4 of 6 warning schools surveyed: Baylor University, Brigham Young, Hillsdale College, and Liberty. 2 of the schools surveyed had an equal number of conservative to liberal students: University of South Carolina and University of Toledo. The average liberal to conservative student ratio on the 232 liberal campuses is 5-1, with an extremely unbalanced maximum of 55-1 at Smith College. Holy crap. In contrast, the average conservative to liberal student ratio on the 20 conservative campuses is 3-1, with a maximum of 20-1 at Liberty University. With the exception of Hillsdale College, the conservative campuses have a conservative to liberal student ratios of less than 2-1. How comfortable are students expressing political views on campus? Overall, low levels of comfort expressing views. So, here's the main graphic here for that. It's always nice to have pictures worth 1,000 words. How comfortable would you feel doing the following on campus? Publicly disagreeing with a professor, expressing disagreement with one of your professors in a written assignment about a controversial topic in a written assignment, expressing your views on a controversial topic during an in-class discussion, expressing your views on a controversial political topic to other students during a discussion in a common campus space, expressing an unpopular political opinion to your fellow students on a social media account tied to your name. This is easily the biggest one because these dark blues are the somewhat and very uncomfortable. This is easily the largest one, cracking probably 70% when I'm reading that. Publicly disagreeing with a professor is right up there with it in terms of the number of students who'd be very uncomfortable doing that. Expressing disagreement. This is probably, there's not one of these that are not, because like 50 is like right here. So all of these are over half of students at this point, which is really sad. And it's actually really interesting because it's not just, it isn't really just the conservative students. Yes, the conservative and moderate students are actually always higher in terms of their discomfort in talking about something, but it's actually really interesting to see that it's certainly not just them, it's also the more liberal students who are afraid of expressing an opinion on something. Um, self censorship. Okay, let's see. That's the self censorship section. Which topics are difficult to discuss? Interesting bunch in here. Abortion was actually the biggest one. Kind of makes sense given the current thing, and that was during that survey period. No, it was actually during the last survey period when that happened, because that was overturned in Roe versus Wade was overturned in 2022. So there would be that, but there were certainly some interesting things in here in terms of what to talk about. Let's see. Tolerance of controversial speakers. Let's see. Where is there a graphic? Yeah. How acceptable would you say it is to engage in the following action to protest a campus speaker? Shouting down a speaker to prevent them from speaking on campus. How acceptable would you say it is? So shouting down actually went down. Wait a second. Is it 63% saying this is acceptable? I'm missing something. While shouting down more than 3/5 report. Okay. Is at least rarely acceptable. Okay. So this is acceptable to some degree. You got to be careful with some of these things. And they're not showing me this in here, so I got to dig up the raw data here eventually, but usually it's like never acceptable, rarely, acceptable some of the time, acceptable all the time. You know, those kinds of things. This table is grouping those three things where it says acceptable at some point in time here at the end. So some degree of acceptable are the number of students here that are saying that, which is not good. That's 60. Well, I mean, it's gone down, which is nice over the couple of years, but yeah, that's not fun. Let's see. Schools with 3 or more sanctioned scholars. University of Florida. Interesting. Yale shows up in there. Let's see. Oh, no, I got that. How do students perceive? Students tended to report that their campus stance on protecting free speech is unclear at best. Yeah. Most universities are not clear about it at all. I know that. Let's see. Attempts to sanction scholars. Disinvitation attempts. FIRE's campus disinvitation database documents efforts to disinvite speakers from public and private American institutions from 1998 to present. Let's see. The following schools were each the site of more than one successful disinvitation and altogether accounted for 14 of the total. Cornell, Dartmouth, Harvard, St. Louis, University of California, Davis, University of New Mexico, University of South Carolina. Among the schools surveyed, we recorded 29 instances of schools supporting speakers during a disinvitation campaign. Okay. We make it to the conclusions here. So there is actually a lot, which is kind of why I'm rushing forward to this, and this video has already gotten long. So there's a lot here, and I encourage you to go have a look through it. A lot of interesting stuff. They also make this handy tool every time they do that, so you can actually go and look at specific schools and what was said about them, and be able to see certain things here. So like, let's go all the way down and start at the very, very, very bottom. The Harvard University. 26% say shouting down a speaker is never acceptable. So 3/4 of students say it's okay. 50% say they have rarely or never self-censored on campus, which mean there's 50% that say they self-censor quite frequently also, which is not good. 39% of students say they are not worried about damaging their reputation because someone misunderstands them. So a distinct majority at Harvard are worried about it to some degree. Let's see. Student voices. See, I always like seeing these because the students are given the opportunity to write in their own voices what they had to deal with. Please share a moment where you personally felt you could not express your opinion on campus. Despite having friends and a strong social support network on campus, I felt very alone. I am a moderate Republican, and even opinions I possess that are moderate or even left leaning on the national scale seem relatively unaccepted among the student body. It is incredibly difficult and isolating political landscape to navigate for someone who is not left wing. I felt uncomfortable speaking about the immorality of abortion because it is the campus wide view that killing an innocent human being is valid. I was ostracized in my class for saying so. Anything that would fall in the realm of cancelable opinions, I would feel substantial pause about expressing. I'd be most worried about the response of the students than professors or administrators, though. My meritocracy class, where any objection to affirmative action was off limits unofficially in section I'm pro, but it is a very controversial topic and should be questioned like all other policies. That is a good student right there to be thinking that. Boy, this is the bottom here with this thing at Harvard is two very opposite things. This feels like it's a very woke person to think that of Harvard, and then this is the opposite perspective altogether. That's very interesting. Wow. Okay, so let's go a little bit up in the rankings and have a look at somebody else. Let's maybe get somewhere in the middle. How about that? Somewhere in the middle. In the middle, in the middle, in the middle. How about MIT? Because they had a really fun situation not too long ago with the cancellation of Dorian Abbott. Same kind of thing. Here, apparently, about 60% of students are afraid of damaging their reputation. So, what did the students have to say? When my friends were freaking out about the Supreme Court's abortion ban, and I was feeling very much the opposite way compared to them. Yeah. In my art class, my peers were discussing being in a group with, quote, conservatives and how they were annoyed to have been the one that they felt was the only voice of reason. I didn't feel comfortable saying I was a conservative, even though I don't think I am unreasonable. In other words, liberals, more liberal students there. I have very conservative views that are well constructed and science based, not just faith based. Yet these views are often seen as hateful. I fear getting shot down immediately without being able to explain myself and be seen as sexist, homophobic, etc., even though those things couldn't be further from reality. Okay. Student who can't spell the word always on the one thing there, but not in line with the narrative. Yep. There's a lot of these kinds of things, and students will speak their minds for sure when they are doing these things. Michigan Tech being number one here, and even they still have a majority that say they are somewhat worried about their reputation. So let's see. There was a speaker with what I would say is a fairly extreme political view that happened to be different than mine. I went to the event voluntarily because I was interested in hearing his perspective. At the end of his talk, he offered to debate people who disagreed with him. Seeing as most of the people in the room seemed to agree with his beliefs, I would not have been comfortable at all speaking up. So, this is a fair point, and I don't know who this student is. I don't know who the speaker was or anything like that. But I do know that groups like the Young Americas Foundation actually encourage folks who disagree and give you line to the front first. And they try to encourage you to come do it and to come up and speak and disagree and engage in respectful dialogue and discussion, which I encourage and I think should happen more. So that is the College Free Expression Survey. And I will, of course, include all of these links for you. And don't forget to go sign up for Wokescreen.com, promo code ScioSophia, if you want to take 10% off your membership with Wokescreen.com. That's it for now. If you like this video, hit the like button on the way out the door, comment on the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all of that lovely good jazz. Until next time, I'm Adrian. May you stay curious, everybody.